Hey guys, it's Kevin Lawton with the New Warehouse Podcast. I'm here at the PorterLogic booth. My friends here in Atlanta, and we're in Atlanta at Modex. So happy to connect with PorterLogic always, and happy to connect with Anya here from PorterLogic. And we're going to talk a little bit about supply planning today, some of the challenges around that, and some of the solutions, which hint might be PorterLogic. And we're going to talk a little bit about some of the examples that they have from their experience as well. So Anya, how are you?
Doing great. Doing great. It's day 3 at Modex.
Day 3, yeah.
A little bit tired, a lot caffeinated. Still plenty of energy to rock and
Definitely.
roll.
Well, we're gonna give you that little push to get through the finish line of tomorrow, right? So
Yeah.
tell us a little bit about PorterLogic first for people that maybe are not familiar.
Yeah. So we're really a supply chain operations platform to facilitate any and all of the supply chain operation you have to do within your 4 walls. So everything from procurement management of how you're bringing in raw materials, how you're managing your vendors, how you're doing that supply planning, to how you're actually receiving those goods, where you're stocking them in your warehouse, to fulfilling your outbound orders. So how are you doing order collection? How are you routing those orders to different warehouses? And then inside the warehouse, how are you actually facilitating the pick, pack, and ship process? So we often plug into an existing ERP to who may or may not have certain necessarily pitfalls or some things that they just don't they aren't able to handle particularly well,
Right.
particularly for customers who have a more vertically integrated supply chain. So those are the folks that we work with. There's a lot more complexity. There's a lot of nuances like expiration dates, serialization, lot tracking, keeping up with manufacturing dates, and lots of different nuanced attributes.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And kind of the end-to-end almost supply chain, right? Hitting all those different points and creating those
Yep.
more easier to manipulate, right? Your
Yep.
platform makes it easier to manipulate those workflows and bring those together. So
Absolutely, yep. But I stop at the dock. I do not deal with logistics. That is no longer my problem once it goes on the truck. So
all right, great. And we talked to Jonathan before about some of the things with PorterLogic, but today we want to focus on supply planning. So
Yep.
maybe let's level set a little bit. So tell us in your definition, what does supply planning kind of encompass?
yeah, so supply planning is really it's really controlling it's really modulating the demand signal of of what people want to buy from you, and making sure that you have the right things that they want to buy, right?
Mm.
So it's basically the intersection of where demand meets supply, right?
Right.
There's the forecasting aspect where ideally you'd have a magic 8 ball to predict exactly what people are going
That
to
would
buy
be
from you.
nice. Yeah.
But usually, fortunately, we don't have one of those, so you have to you have to look at a couple different attributes and sort of figure your way around that. And then on the other side is, okay, so you've predicted how many gadgets you think you're going to sell.
Right.
How are you going to create those gadgets, or how are you going to source them? And so from a supply planning perspective, what are the ingredients or the components that you need? Where are you getting them from? How long is it going to take you to get them? If you've got a series of or if you've got a network of vendors, you usually have to kind of keep them happy, and you have to balance between, I'm going to give 60% of my business to this guy, 40% to this guy. You have to hold them accountable, and then you're juggling so many balls in the air to make sure that you
Right.
get those right components at the right time, in the right configuration, to the warehouse at the right time, and that everything is there at the same time. It's almost like an orchestra, right? And
Right.
there's all those different instruments around.
Right. And if you hit a wrong note, it sounds terrible, right?
Yes.
So tell us a little bit about, because there's a lot of things that you're juggling there, as you
Mhm.
mentioned, and bringing all those different parts together to be able to, eventually just deliver that one product to your customer at the end of it all. So tell us a little bit about maybe some common problems or challenges that supply chains experience in this
Yeah.
area.
Yeah, I mean, if you just look at the headlines, like they're
Yeah.
listed all right there,
Yeah.
essentially, right? So there's the disruptions, right? There's all of the world disruptions, the kerfuffles, kerfuffles
Yeah.
and the wars, and things going wrong there, which are causing they're causing delays, and they're almost kind of causing this SWIP effect, essentially, where you're as soon as you're behind on one thing, and like there's just this daisy chain of all these other consequences that happen. So
Right.
we're trying to account for those disruptions, and you're trying to react quickly and move some of your network to different places. So that's definitely a big one. Another piece of it is still around, people still don't know what they have, right? It's still, especially if they have it in multiple places, they still don't have full visibility of what they actually have on the shelf and whether it's even any good anymore. And then, the third piece is just predicting demand, and that's both on the B2C and the B2B level, where, it's not just, we talk about, fickle consumers and, how things change on the consumer side all the time, but it's also that, with whatever interest rates are doing, right? Our company's investing more, investing less. They used to have during COVID, they didn't have enough materials. They bought too much, and then now they have too much. They had to write off a bunch of it. So now they don't have enough again. And so they're constantly basically playing this juggling game, and we've yet to find the formula to get to a more stable place. I would say that we're in a little bit of, you're trying to almost find this Goldilocks zone, but you're on the seesaw constantly, and you're trying not to crash either way.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think there's so many challenges there to be able to do that. Like you said, you see a lot of them in the headlines, right? I mean, I think most notably toilet paper, went crazy. We had that was one of the biggest deals of the pandemic, right? But, I think those things, as we look at them, it's so important to start to understand and get your hands around them and really understand those problems. And I think it starts a little bit with visibility, as you mentioned, especially on the inventory side. What do I have here? What do I have there? Is this, do I have something there and it has 5 inches of dust on top of it because it's been there forever, and what's the point of having it? But how does kind of PorterLogic come into play there and help with some of those things?
Yeah. So, when we're in the warehouse, we're enabling that visibility. So, and we're enabling it automatically as well, right? So, for example, if we're doing if we're doing put away and picking tasks, we're doing some of the cycle counting as well, where you have, you might have the same folks who are just, they're working on their gun, and now they have a cycle count task. They're going and they're counting some of these gadgets and all of those pieces, and we're constantly aggregating and looking at that data. And the more that you're doing that in real time, or at least on a very regular basis, the more accurate picture you have of what you actually have in the warehouse. The other thing we're doing is we're tracking those important attributes sort of from the very beginning, right? So being able to capture those expiration dates, being able to inspect for damage, actually have built-in quality checks both on inbound and outbound to ensure that you've got the right, nothing's damaged, nothing is, spoiled or run or, in the wrong temperature zone, or any of those different pieces. So it's really it's a lot of, that's kind of within one warehouse. If you're, a lot of our customers are also using partners as well, and their partners, their idea of visibility is, I'm going to send you this inventory spreadsheet. Now, this inventory spreadsheet does not match any of the other inventory spreadsheets. And if you have a dozen partners like that, a dozen 3PLs, say, that you're using, each one of those is different. And so, you might have a poor analyst, bless their soul, who has to try and wrangle all of this together. Yep. So we're automating, we're systemizing those pieces where we're pulling that information automatically. We're cleansing it and basically making it apples to apples. And then we're tying it in, with the inventory that you have, that you're fulfilling on your own as well, to give you one full picture of everything you have across your entire network. And then even if you need to rebalance, say you need to transfer between, one facility to another facility, you can just initiate those transfer orders, and you can track them just the same way you would track any PO or you would track any sales orders.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's great. I mean, once you get that visibility, I think you can kind of really get a harness on what you have, and then what do I need, right? So tell us a little bit about how you kind of you get that visibility, right? And then you get that kind of foundation almost of this is where my inventory stands right now. This is what it looks like. Now, how do I take that back and improve upon my supply planning with that information?
Yep. So it's a little bit of an iterative feedback loop, where typically what happens, and this is why supply planning is still kind of in the spreadsheet world for a lot of companies, is people create at the beginning of the year, a lot of folks create a demand plan, or maybe they created it in basically created in a vacuum, and then it lives in a Google sheet somewhere, and then they created a supply plan somewhere else. And then they've got their inventory data, let's say, in their business operations system or in their ERP. And so what they end up doing in terms of supply planning is they end up downloading that data, trying to marrying it all together, and then basically uploading back again, because the tools that they have are not flexible enough to work how they want to work, essentially. But, I mean, that's usually the reason why, and everyone ends up going back to a spreadsheet, is because, well, I want column A and column B to be next to each other. I need to rename this so I don't have to do the mental gymnastics of it. And a lot of times you just can't. Most systems just don't enable you to be that flexible, to basically to match the process that you want to do. And so what we really do is we enable, number one, a more iterative process of supply planning. So, you have a demand forecast. Maybe sales gave you a demand forecast, and then maybe you have some algorithms who built one out as well. And then you want to marry those together, and then you also want to do a sanity check. And then you also want to go back and you want to compare what you actually did versus what you said you were going to do. And so you can make adjustments for the future. And so we're marrying those data sources together, and we're enabling that visibility to basically show you how accurate your forecast actually was. And then that's driving your future forecast.
Right.
And then you can have a kind of multi-layer in, validation of that forecast, where you could literally have, certain sales regions or certain people go in and validate what demand might be down to a certain product. And so it's both machine driven and kind of going off of some historical logic, at the same time also incorporating a bit of that human intuition as well. Because the thing of it is there's no machine in the world that can predict the next black swan event.
Yeah.
And so your forecast is going to go out the window, but you can at least be a little bit prepared for kind of build in some of that human intuition and put that into the forecast, even if historically it doesn't look like there's much of anything there.
Yeah.
So from that perspective, you're creating a better forecast for the future. And then you're having to tie that into, okay, well, for this product, this is how much I think I'm going to sell. So here's how much I'm currently actually, let's say I've got future sales orders. Here's how much I'm currently actually projected to sell. Here's kind of my, here's my transfer orders for this product. Here's what my planned POs are. So I'm basically looking at the chart of, okay, this is my demand.
Right.
And then this is what I have in the warehouse. And it's as I'm selling these things, what I have in the warehouse is inching down. And then at a certain point, I want to make sure that when it hits that trigger, or ideally a little bit before, that's when I hit the reorder.
Yeah.
And that I have enough adequate time with my vendors to actually get that product in the door before I run out. Because then what ends up happening is if you don't get the lead time correct, or let's say your vendor says, oh yeah, this takes me 5 days. Well, we're actually tracking when we placed the PO versus when it was actually shipped versus when we actually received it. And so they're saying it's 5 days, but it's actually 3 weeks.
Yeah.
We're accounting for where the system is telling you, you need to place this three weeks beforehand, not the 5 days that the vendor's telling you.
Right.
Because otherwise you end up running into, you have to expedite it, or you're just out of stock and you're back ordered, and you get into a number of those different issues.
So it's giving you kind of that reality, I guess, in a sense, right? So it's giving you that visibility into that and being able to see that and what reality is and when you should actually order versus when the supplier might be wishing that they can tell you you can order in time. So I'm curious, you have kind of a use case too, right? Or a case study example of a company called Thistle, right? So tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah. So Thistle's a really fast growing. Basically, they're similar to HelloFresh, where they're making and delivering fresh meals every single week. Growing extremely fast in the U.S. Their food is absolutely delicious.
Good.
Half the PorterLogic team is now subscribed to their stuff.
Okay.
But they were, they grew so quickly. Their systems did not have a chance to catch up.
Right.
And so they had to. They just opened a second warehouse manufacturing facility, and they were still running everything on spreadsheets. And they were, they were kind of constantly a little bit behind the 8 ball. And they were, even doing things like Instacarting particular, vegetables to get into their kitchen because
to get it in time.
Get it in time because, they looked and, they think they have cucumbers kind of in stock, and then they go look, and then, half of them are, either expired or they just weren't there basically.
Yeah.
And so they're having to do those pieces. And so what we did was, we implemented warehouse management for them, but the more interesting piece is the procurement management side. So
Okay.
they are very much a stickler for very 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 fresh ingredients, and so they have vendors who basically have ingredients who have long lead times and short lead times that have to be managed a little bit differently. Some of their they go through a very rigorous like quality control process where they're actually
Right.
doing essentially double triple QC before the product even gets into the warehouse for freshness and all of those different pieces.
Yeah.
And so we we collaborated with them on basically on a material planning, essentially supply and material planning tools, basically a set of dashboards and
Got it.
kind of like applications for their procurement team to go through, for their planners to actually plan plan line by line what it is that they're ordering every week, when things are when things are expiring, what they should be hitting, as well as balancing their different vendors as well. So they want to maintain a certain mix of to have redundancy, not to give too much business to any particular vendor, to be able to balance out those things and kind of keep the playing field level,
Right.
as well as keeping the making sure you get the right price, you get the right quantity, and all of those different pieces. So we got them out of all of their kind of their spreadsheet hell, as you potentially
I can
call
imagine.
it. I mean, they literally had there was lots of I think that there's basically a document that listed there's a spreadsheet that listed all the other spreadsheets. You get into a meta level of system management there.
Yeah, we need to go into the spreadsheet, and it's going to tell us which spreadsheet to use, right?
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think it's great that you're able to do that. And I think it's great, too, because it's a great example, because a lot of companies, I think, run into that issue, right? That all of a sudden they have explosive growth and, they haven't put the foundation in to handle growth and things like that. So it's great that PorterLogic could come in and help them to do that. And I'm sure the way that PorterLogic is kind of structured and built with those, workflows and everything, you're able to also grow and scale with them, too, right?
Yep, absolutely. It's a little bit what's it called? One of our solution consultants came up with this analogy, but it's a little bit of like you have a suit, and the suit might look okay on you, but if you get it tailored, it can look great on you. And so that's part of the PorterLogic platform, is the tailoring to actually fit your particular operation. And because every single company I talk to, and I talk to dozens a day basically, is they all do planning just a little bit differently. Even in the same industry, even the same size, from the outside, the company looks the same, but they do it a little bit differently for a reason. It is not just because it's not just for the hell of it. They have a reason that's how they're doing it, and that's how they're seeing success. And it's usually those little tweaks, right? It's those little straws that cause them to be frustrated with some of their systems, and they end up reverting back to a spreadsheet, because they're like, well, this particular box, I can buy this procurement software that's basically a box, and it just doesn't quite fit me, right? It's a little bit tight here, or it's a little bit too loose here, like it's just not tailored to match my proportions.
Interesting. Yeah, and I love that analogy too. I think that's a great way to look at it, is tailoring your supply chain almost, so it fits your business better in your organization, and just like people, right? Everybody's size is unique in the way they're structured and all those things. So so it's really great to connect with you here, Anya, and talk about PorterLogic and kind of the supply planning problems and how you're bringing solutions to that, and then helping these companies to also grow and scale and put in those foundational things to be able to handle that. So if people want to get their supply chain tailored, what's the best way to get in touch with PorterLogic?
So LinkedIn, we're very active on LinkedIn. Our website, PorterLogic.com. Obviously, feel free to reach out, and then reach out to me, Anya at PorterLogic.com, or Anya Skomorokhova. If you look me up on LinkedIn, you'll kind of see me on the page over there too. So.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, so check out PorterLogic, and if you want to get your supply chain tailored just like a suit, make sure you utilize PorterLogic, and we'll put all that information in the show notes as well, so people can easily find it. So thank you once again, Anya, for your time.
Yeah, thank you.
Hey guys, thank you so much for tuning into today's video here on our YouTube channel, the New Warehouse Podcast, and I appreciate you tuning in. If you liked what you saw, make sure you subscribe to our channel, and if you like this video in particular, make sure you like it as well. And if you want to get this great t-shirt that you see in the video behind me, Warehouses Are Sexy, head to warehousesAreSexy.com and get your own.